Good afternoon, and I'm very pleased to be able to share this afternoon with you some work that I've done for a client, which is fortunately in the public domain, so I'm able to share it for you. And it's about research picture stories. This isn't perhaps the best story, but it shows you the functionality of what we're doing. And I suppose the starting point is this. I've always used photographs in my qual research. I've often travelled to some pretty extraordinary places, met some pretty extraordinary people, seen people working in pretty amazing environments. I think particularly in the B2B work. I've done a lot of work with diesel mechanics and farmers and all these weird and wonderful people over the years. And by taking photographs, when I come back, I'm able to convey something to my client that simply they wouldn't understand, not having been out in the field in the same way, without having that photograph to explain to them where they are. And I think one of the best examples of this is with diesel mechanics, in fact, looking at and photographing the work environment. Our client was producing, fabulous, glossy, highly gorgeous and glamorous marketing material to send out to diesel mechanics. And really when we went to their work environment, half of them were sitting in shipping containers. That was their office. They had some of them didn't have an office, and quite a few of them actually worked in the open air. So that work environment, being able to actually show my client how people were working and where their material was ending up, was incredibly powerful. I think the thing is that also photographs are becoming, or visual material is now just becoming the new words. It's how ideas are conveyed far more than they ever were. Clients relate to the ideas very well, but also consumers are providing photographs to us through all of the different platforms that we now use to research them. They can upload photographs into communities or bulletin boards, MROCs, surveys even. They can certainly do it on mobile phones for us. So the way in which we can collate consumer-based information is increasing enormously. The problem, though, is as a researcher, you then end up with a file that looks something like this. 300 or 400 photographs in a file with the brand name as the file name, and the need to go through and identify each one, assign some meaning to it, usually only through the name label, and get some interpretation from it. And it can be incredibly difficult to do it, because if you classify one photo one way, what if you want to look at it in a slightly different way? You've got to pull it out of that folder and put it into another folder, and so on. So it's the collation of it in the first instance that's problematic, but then the analysis and the interpretation even more of a challenge. So it's about classifying them, programming them, providing them in a useful format for analysis and to see the market. So what I did is develop a product called, oh, I've just skipped a page. No, I haven't. Which is, there's a piece of software available in the market that's usable for adaptation called Pivot Viewer. And what it does is it allows you to look at the photos and assign the classification and the meaning that you want to them. In this instance, the example that I'm showing with you is actually just about some assets that were on the ground. I was working with a group of people collaborating from I think 5 different locations, and we were talking, and the team was located in 5 different locations, and the project was based in 5 different locations. So when we got together, it was quite often incredibly important as a team on this research project to be able to utilise the photos to understand what each of us were talking about, or exactly what asset it was that we were talking about as we were collaborating on the project. So this was what happens is you actually put your photo into a spreadsheet-based location, and you put your classifications out here to the right of the photograph. In this case, the classifications were reasonably simplistic, and there was only 3 levels of classification, but it can go on and on and on. And the purpose here is that we can resort the information on any of the chosen classifications. If you like, when this is finished, you can go to a website called www.alliancesnapshots.com. You'll need to do this, though, on the Windows browser because it's a Microsoft-based product, and it really only works well on the Internet Explorer platform. And the reason for saying that is that it's actually a very dynamic tool, and you can do deep zooms and sort of sorts and so on the photos. It's really quite fabulous to look at. But unfortunately, because of the bandwidth for the webinar, it was going to really interrupt with the audio. So we've just gone to screen capture to display this. But basically, this is I think there was a total of I think it was nearly 300 photos in this project. These were coastal caravan parks. We were looking at the impacts of climate change on these assets, and we were interviewing consumers and talking about their enjoyment of the location and so on. So these are a series of photos that were taken of those locations. In this instance, this is all location, all of the assets sitting there. And of course that's not really much use to anybody because you can't actually see the photo. But by using the menu on the left-hand side, you can get it to do little sorts. So for anybody here who's used to using what is it called? Pivot tables, it's very, very much the same kind of concept. It's just instead of moving data around, we're moving photos around and classifying them according to predefined methods. So looking at the next slide, what we can see is that there were 5 sites here that we were talking about: Port Arlington, Warrnambool, Port Fairy, Apollo Bay and Barwon Heads. And I'd just like to point out at this point that Port Fairy is a very beautiful town, and it has just been, in fact, nominated as the world's most livable country town. So if you're ever here in Victoria, you need to go to Port Fairy and have a look. So this is just to show you on the left-hand side there the classifications that we can utilise. And then you can click those on and it will filter out the photos for you. So in this case, I've filtered it by Port Arlington, and so these are now all of the photos for Port Arlington. The others have been excluded. As I mentioned previously, we were very interested in coastal erosion. So a fairly important part of this project, as we were talking to each other, was looking at the foreshore areas of the caravan parks. So in this case, we've got Port Arlington, and then it's got a second layer of filter on it, which is foreshore areas. And as you can see, the foreshore areas for Port Arlington camping ground appear, and each of the photos is labelled. In the online version of this, I can then click on any one of those images and it'll give me a deep zoom and I'll get a full-scale photo appearing. Also what it does is you can actually create graphs out of it. So in this case, this is a graph for each of the sites that we covered in the survey. As you can see, I took slightly more photos of the foreshore area at Port Arlington, Warrnambool, and far fewer at Barwon Heads. But it just puts them all together, and you can actually put it into a graphical format if that suits you know, the way in which you're presenting. I suppose the thing is with this in particular, this was largely used for a collaborative purpose in a research team, but for those with a skerrick of imagination, and we all do because we're all researchers, you can see how this could apply in many circumstances. The idea of being able to develop imagery around segmentation, for example, and products, you can see immediately the usefulness of it. So it's great for collaboration. It's great even just simply for analysis of photographic data sets that one has collated. And it's actually very good for documenting assets, and they may even just be brands. So I just wanted to share that with you because I think it's a very different way to treat photographic material rather than extracting a couple of key shots and passing them to the client in a presentation, actually being able to give them a deliverable which they can interact with independently using sort of some predefined criteria. And that's the end of my presentation this afternoon.